black men are attracted to light-skinned black women with long hair. Do you believe that, Kathy Russell? You are co-author of The Color Complex. Do you believe that?
Overall, yes, I believe that.
Mm-hmm. And is it your view that this is because of a white world that respects lightness?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that the black man then internalizes this and sees lightness as better, sexier?
Right.
Is it akin to a white man being attracted to a blue-eyed blonde woman? These are the women in the white world we think of as sexy and beautiful, etc.
Right, and the comparison in the black world to the blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman is the light-skinned African-American woman. So it's...
Is it true that in your own life you dated a man who wouldn't marry you because why?
Well, he said that I wasn't quite light enough to be his wife, but to bear his children. That was what he said. But I think it's not a personal vendetta of mine. I want to make that point up front. It's just something that that I've seen throughout my life, and that's why.
Yes. Your book includes phrases like "high yella."
Yeah, those are terms that people use to describe others' color.
But high yella is that good, or is it offered in a sneering way?
No, I would say that's offered in a sneering way.
But this has divided black families, has it not?
Oh, definitely it has.
And do we not have a lot of pain out there from men and women? I would think mostly women who took a lot. If you're light-skinned, there was a resentment.
Absolutely. And also, it's both.
Incidentally, what are you, just curiously, may I ask, on the scale?
See, and it's a strange thing. I have been everything from light to dark, and it really depends on who you're sitting next to. If I'm sitting next to this gentleman, I become lighter. If I'm sitting next to someone that's lighter than I become darker, and because I'm kind of in the middle. That's why it's all really crazy, because it just depends on how you see it.
But it's important enough for you to do a lot of work on this and to co-author the book.
Well, because I think it's caused people a lot of pain. And that, that's why we wrote this book.
You also tell stories of black parents who are disapproving when their children or a young adult, a teenager, brings home a dark-skinned date.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not all black families. I mean, my mom isn't like that. It's just some that are like that.
You sit next to your co-author, Midge Wilson. You likewise are responsible for The Color Complex. You're a social psychologist from DePaul University. And may I say, it should be said you're a white person.
I'm a white person. Sorry.
Well, there was a time in this country when we might have had some tribunals that would demand that you prove it.
We still have it.
You're still right.
We still have it?
She could have one drop in her, you never know.
And that's all it would take,
That's all it takes.
As far as I know.
Yes, ask the people who wrote the law. You believe that, first of all, this kind of prejudice exists within the black community.
That is my understanding, and especially after working on this book, because I think a lot of whites don't realize the extent of the prejudice.
Yeah. Tell us about your own, how the scales fell from your eyes. You're an academic, and you did a lot of scholarship on this. Tell us.
I grew up in the South, and I heard things white people would say, like, light-skinned blacks are more intelligent. This is known as the mulatto hypothesis. And it's a very arrogant assumption on the part of whites that if they have some white blood in them, then that makes them smarter because they're more like us. Or you hear other things like dark-skinned black men are more criminally dangerous, more sexually driven. And there are all these crazy myths that exist in the white community about African Americans on the basis of their skin color.
Just to stop you for a moment now, we have the proverbial white person walking down the street at night, and coming the other way are black men.
Right.
Now the question is, who's going to flee to the other side of the street?
Right.
And in your hypothesis, if those black males are very black, the fleeing will take place with more urgency.
With more rapidity. Yes. Because there is a perception that the darker the skin, the lower the class, the angrier, and this isn't true. There is a color class hierarchy in this country, but there's no one-on-one relationship. There's no one-on-one relationship between skin color and intelligence.
And is it your view that the, but this is a very sad commentary if we've got this kind, we have black people who are adopting the same kind of racist chemistry that has exploited them for so long by the white power structure.
It's a clear case of trickle-down discrimination, and I think African Americans have been hesitant to talk about this issue. We don't want to air our dirty laundry, but they've got to, because whites play a role in perpetuating it, and whites have to look at what they do every day to keep this issue alive.
And when Spike Lee made that comment, it was Spike Lee who said that black men go for light-skinned women with longer hair. And he also made the point that a lot of people, can we see it? He also made the point that a lot of blacks become very uncomfortable because he was saying that. Let me show you here. This was a...
the word is excuse.
This is school days. She's talking about her hair.
No one told you to stand in the hall either. Excuse me. That's better, Miss Thing. It's not real. Say what? You heard. It ain't even real. You wish you had hair like this. Girl, you know you weren't even born with blue eyes.
That's right. Blue contact lenses. They're just jealous.
Right.
Jealous.
Rachel, I've been watching you look at Julian. You're not slick. If that was true, he wasn't much to look at. Pickaninny. Barbie doll. High yellow heifer. Tar baby. Wanna be white, jigaboo.
Well, there's the litany of dirty names to call people if... here's what... that's from School Days, a film directed by Spike Lee. Here's what he said. Whether black men admit it or not, they feel light-skinned women are more attractive than dark-skinned, and they'd rather see long hair than a short afro because that's closer to white women. That comes from being inundated with media from the time you're born that constantly fed you the white woman as the image of beauty. That's both conscious and unconscious, said Mr. Lee. But on the whole, talking to my friends and knowing men, I see that a premium is put on light-skinned sisters with long hair. All true, huh?
All true.
And it's bad because,
well,
first of all, it penalizes persons, it's arbitrary.
Right, absolutely. And not only that, but I think you're buying into, you know, the myth that somehow white is better, so therefore lighter is better. And I think that it then takes out so many other African-American women that are beautiful, whether they have short... And my feeling is this: African-Americans come in looks everything from Whoopi Goldberg to Lena Horne and all in between. And it depends on your personal preference as to what you feel is beautiful. And that's another point to be made. There are prejudices, but there are preferences.
J. Edward Giles is CEO and publisher of Image magazine. Do you agree with Mr. Lee, with Spike Lee's observation about light-skinned women?
Absolutely.
You do?
Absolutely.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, the one problem I have here is that, first of all, this is no new phenomenon. This is not something that just took place like within the past century or past decade or so. This is something that was here from the time that we were brought here, from the time that your forefathers or your forefather stepped into my ancestry's bedroom and took advantage of them.
We shouldn't be surprised when you consider how your life would change if some white guy in a powerful white man could prove you had a drop of Negro blood. That certainly altered your life.
Phil, it's a very interesting point because I'm not so certain that you're all white.
I'm sure I'm not.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure I'm not.
Who knows? My point is that this is where this began, and what is really ugly is how it began, and that is what white America doesn't want to face. That is what black America knows. We know this. It is true, I would add, not only for African-American men, but for African-American women too, or people of color, women of color too, because you see an inundation now of hair weaves. You know, and I understand the issue of cosmetic changes and so forth, like, you know, that I can understand. However, when you weave in a white person's hair on your head and you call yourself a proud black woman, we have a problem here. Okay?
What's the matter? She didn't weave anybody else's hair on her head.
we have an issue. We have a problem.
You don't have a problem with cornrows, do you?
No, I don't have a problem with cornrows. If we're talking about using what is natural to you.
Yeah. You have a problem with straightening? Straightening hair if you're a black person?
If it is intended to change who you are, yes.
I think if we want to talk about when it all started, we talk about before the slaves got here. A Caribbean slave owner actually was talking to a slave owner in South Carolina before he got a slave. He said, you know, how am I going to keep these slaves in line? You know, I don't have any clue as to what we're going to do. So what he actually did was the slave owner in the Caribbean islands actually wrote him a letter back saying to him, listen, you got to start to create some kind of dissension between them. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to call the light-skinned one, bring them in the house, and the darker-skinned ones, you're going to create some kind of friction between themselves, and that's where it all started. We're going to talk about how it started here in America.
We can oppress these people better if we can get them to fight with each other.
Right.
Absolutely.
And isolate them. Before we break here, Muhammad Nasihu Ali is a writer and musician. And are you born in Ghana?
Yes, I was born in Ghana.
Uh-huh. You came to the United States in 1988.
1988.
So
yeah.
your early life and adolescence and young manhood was in Africa.
Back home in Africa.
Uh-huh. And you came here and you said, among other things, first of all, Africans prefer to marry and date lighter-skinned Africans. Is that so?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean,
same thing. You're here to confirm what we're hearing.
And
it's true in Africa.
It is very true in Africa, too.
Uh-huh. You wrote an article for a publication which said blacks can be racist too, and you were merely pointing this out. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And you took a good deal of abuse for saying this out loud.
Yes, I did. I did. I got a lot of letters from people all over the country. And someone I remember called me an exotic pet for white people. You know, call me all sorts of names.
You lived with a white family in a predominantly white suburb in the state of Michigan.
In Michigan, yes.
And you wrote about prejudice in Africa, which certainly does exist.
It does. I mean, that is what is killing Africa, I believe. I mean, what happened in Liberia is about blacks against blacks. It's about tribes killing tribes. And that is what is happening right now, in Rwanda.
In Rwanda. Here's just one. This is number 20. This is one letter you got. These whites would be, I assume this is from a black reader. These whites would be terrified at living in a black neighborhood, but they would invite an African student to live in their house as a kind of hypocritical show of liberalism. Subconsciously, the white family you lived with probably saw you as some exotic pet.
You see, I do not believe in that at all.
This young man's point about getting the poor people to fight with each other is made in this other letter to you, Muhammad. The hypocritical whites who invite Africans into their house also have the evil practice of advising Africans not to associate with African Americans, the usual divide and conquer play.
You see, what bothers me a lot here is all blacks from Africa and then here in America, we always tend to say they made us. They are dividing us so that we could fight.
Right.
And I believe that if we do believe that whites have the power to divide us, then we buy into the idea that we're inferior. I don't believe so. I don't believe anyone has the power to make me to hate you.
Let me start with Cassandra and Mimi, if we may, huh? You don't mind? Cassandra, you were in line at a restaurant?
Yes.
And Mimi was an employee, was she not?
Correct.
Yes. And there was was it like a fast food place?
Yes, it was.
It was your turn to be waited on, was it?
Right.
What did she do?
She bypassed me to wait on the whites that were in line behind me. And I had a problem with that, which she says it's because I took too much time to make up my mind. And
why do you think she did that, Cassandra?
Well, after even knowing her a little bit longer, I see that she has a tendency to gravitate towards whites when she needs an opinion on something. And this was since the incident. And also, she has a problem with determining colors within the workplace. She has a tendency to tell individuals that she knows she's not as dark as someone else, and her kids are not dark complected, and she prefers to buy her children white toys, and she practically discriminates against anything that's dark complected when she herself is.
You didn't go to court and learn this, did you?
No.
You just, but after this, how is it that occasion you're talking to her about it?
Well, due to an unusual circumstances, we've become employed at the same office now. And this has continued to happen because I see pictures of her daughters with white dolls, and an individual at work that's her friend gave her a black doll, and she even remarked that she didn't know if her child would play with that black doll. And
you do, Mimi, you do wait on white people first.
No, it depends. I mean, if you're standing in line, I'm working at a fast food chain, fast food, and you're still looking at the menu, then I'm going to get the next person in line.
So you're suggesting that because she was taking so long, for efficiency and to expedite the orders. You don't believe it?
No, I don't believe it.
Well, there's a pretty. What are you now? We're going to get the. You're going to get the tree and the horse and the rope, and let's go to the.
No, but I would expect to see that she would tend to me first if I was next on line. I don't believe that anybody should be discriminated, no matter how long it takes them to make a choice.
Yeah.
That's not discriminating against anyone. That's not discriminating against anyone. If you're standing in line and still looking up at the menu, then that means you're not ready.
Yes. Hang on just a second. I'll get to you in just a moment. Do you date dark-skinned men?
It depends on what you call dark-skinned men.
no, she doesn't.
It depends on what you call dark-skinned men.
I'm dark. I'm dark.
I don't consider you dark.
I'm dark.
But I don't consider you dark.
Oh. But the men in her lives have been lighter than you.
Yeah.
No.
Mimi, obviously here we've got the beginnings of the sketch of a profile of a person who's not at all comfortable with your own blackness.
I'm not black. I'm brown.
She's not.
I'm brown. I'm not black.
All I can think of is just brainwashing. I mean, that's all I can think of. I've seen it on all levels of just being, for me, a light-skinned black person. I attend these balls, I don't know, want to say where, but where it used to be predominantly high yellow, as this
High yellow, yeah.
High yellow, light-skinned, light, bright, damn near white people.
Oh, yeah.
And
Damn near white, as in, you think you're, in other words, there's a disdain for you because of the color of your skin and a presumption that you strut because you're not as black as some African-American people.
I mean, I wasn't going with that intentions, but I heard one of my friend's mother say, yes, honey, you're here to breed correctly. And of course, all these young, light-skinned gentlemen going to be doctors and lawyers, and I'm like, I'm not a horse. You know, like, I don't want to breed that way. You know, that brother here, he's attractive. You know, like, I really don't care. Color issue is not a deal.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that comes from very good nurturing of who your parents are.
Yeah.
You know, it starts at home, because I had black dolls. My parents colored in our birthday cards, like, this is a little black child. You know, like, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
You have to start within, you know.
Let's just, this young woman presents just one side of this agony, and it is an agony. Man, this is a spider web that we've woven here that gets some very nice people caught up and distracted. Paul Parker, you'll be telling us in a moment about, first of all, you support what's been said here. Light-skinned blacks have always been favored by whites.
Most definitely.
Let me tell you that one case in point here happens to be seated at your left. She's Donna Stewart. Ms. Stewart, you are the admissions counsel for the University of Colorado at Boulder.
Yes.
So good old Boulder decides, by God, this is the 20th century, and we've got to do something about minority enrollment, et cetera, and very conscientiously ensures that there's a woman of color in the admissions office.
Certainly not the only one. I was added to a team of counselors.
All right. But in any event, it was a very well-motivated thing that the University of Colorado Boulder was doing.
I'd like to hope so, yes.
Yes. And you had a prospective student's mother say what?
Well, at admissions programs, we always have parents that volunteer to come and assist with the program and say, this is what the university is all about, this is what I do as a parent for the university. And evidently a parent, without approaching me, without asking me where I stood on issues for people of color, went to the chancellor and wrote a letter petitioning the removal, my removal from the position, saying I want justification for why you hired her, And later on, she applied for my position. So.
But was this a woman of color?
Yes, it was.
But tell them what her grievance was.
She didn't feel that I represented black issues, which...
But it was because of your lightness, was it not?
I suspect, though.
So
yes, it was.
You're not light enough, or you're not dark enough to be recruiting minority students for the University of Colorado Boulder. Is this not what you believe to be this woman's point?
Absolutely. But what people don't understand is that even though I am considered high yellow in the black community, I get it from both ends, and that's
well, that's clear. If you're light, you're disdained by other people of your race, or some of them.
Yes, and teachers, we need to be honest and say that teachers, most of whom in America happen to be white, at least where I have been, are very careful about who they make as their pets, who they send to the office, and they always choose the lighter child.
Right. Well, and also I'd like to make this clear as well. That number one, that there is not no black on black racism. What there is black on black confusion.
I disagree.
By white on black racism. The comment on the point that the brother made here earlier, the individual you're talking about, the slave owner from the Caribbean, is Willie Lynch. And more or less his perspective was that, look, he told the other slave masters that in order to keep your slaves in check, you had to more or less, with the divide and conquer aspect, pit one light-skinned black against a dark-skinned black. You got the house Negroes, you got the field Negroes. You always tell the light-skinned blacks, say, look, you're better than the rest of them blacks. Yeah. You know, you got better things going. You look like me. You're closer. The ones that are dark-skinned are the ones that actually aren't the ones that's good. Yeah. I know you down, sister.
Yeah. Lots of folks want in here.
So
to me, the tragedy is there's no way to win. If you're black and in a major corporation, do I understand that your strategy was not to talk to other black people?
Absolutely.
You talk to other black people.
There was no way. There was, at the time when I had lost my identity and I had lost perspective of who I was, okay, when I bought into what you wanted me to buy into.
You say me.
Let me take, well,
all right, go ahead. Don't be distracted. Okay. Make your point. Lots of folks want in here. Make your point, please. I respect it.
At the time when I did that, I believe that if I were to communicate with my brothers and sisters, I would not be able to make it further.
You mean like at the water cooler or the Xerox machine or in the lunchroom?
Because you, whomever you are, I mean...
I'm looking at you as one of a number of...
I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. White America would look and say, you know what? Okay, he's not going, you know, I saw Jay over there by the water cooler with the homies, you know what I'm saying? And I'm telling you...
when you start talking to the white folks, the brothers are going to accuse you of sucking up.
Absolutely.
So you can't win.
No, you can win. You can win, because the question is, who do you owe your allegiance? And I owe my allegiance to my family. Okay, these are my family here.
Blacks torn from the Boston Globe. This is a very, very well-written article from a paper that's had its own challenges regarding minority hiring, etc. Blacks torn from their native Africa and brought to North America as slaves were often sexually savaged by their white masters. So prevalent was the problem, the question of whether light-skinned children should be free like the father or enslaved like the mother, and that gave us the one drop means you're black or a Negro. In turn, light-skinned slaves with white blood often fetched higher prices at auctions. Some states actually bred mixed-race slaves and sold them at quadroon balls in New Orleans and Charleston, South Carolina. Quadroons are 1/4 black. Octoroons are 1/8 black. Listen to this. Light-skinned slaves were also afforded greater privileges. They were often assigned duties within the house instead of working in the fields. Then we had the paper bag test. Tell them about that.
Well, the paper bag test was a person had to put their arm into a regular paper bag, and if their skin was lighter than the bag, then they were admitted into a social club, a fraternity, a church, whatever the bag was used to test. If it was darker, then they were denied admittance.
Today, skin bleaching products garner $44 million annually, although many black women use items such as Ambifade cream, Porcelana, and Esoterica only to fade freckles or other marks. We have not a few black folks who have quite literally damaged themselves seriously with some of these products. And now, which brings us to the question of Michael Jackson. Here is the single most successful, measured in terms of money, entertainment figure in the history of the universe. He calls so much of our own fascinations to our attention. We have a Peter Pan issue. We could do several shows on that. Now we suddenly have, who was the comedian on Saturday Night Live who said, if it don't make no difference if you're black or white, Michael, how come you're white?
Right. It's more or less with an attitude that he's working once again with that sickness to more or less be accepted within the whole world spectrum. For more or less, and the bottom line is, especially here in America, if you're more dark-skinned, dark-complected, then therefore we are not allowed to move up the economical ladder as easily. That's where it comes from, as far as you get to some brothers that more or less sell out to go get a white woman, saying, okay, in order for me to have economical power, to be a millionaire, I'm gonna get me a white woman. We're gonna have some kind of mixed babies or babies that ain't straight, black on the tip, and then therefore we're able to move up a lot better. That's when you come from the hospital talking about, well, this black will make it, that black cannot make it, so on and so forth. So it's a sickness that he would just more or less been fed into. But the first thing that Michael did when he got into trouble, what did he do? He came to the brothers and sisters. He came to the hood. He went to NAACP. He came back home and said, look, they working to persecute me. I'm black like you. And he came back to the house, back to the hood. So you got to understand that.
Can I say something? We'll never know. We'll never know whether or not Michael's success has anything to do with himself getting lighter and lighter. But if you really look through the albums, Michael, became successful after Off the Wall album. He started changing, and each album afterward, he changed a little more. He became more and more successful,
Now he's married a white woman.
Yeah, well,
It's totally assimilated into white.
I want us to come back to the issue of black and black racism.
Yes.
Please, let's do that.
Miss Stewart, I know you want to get in here, and I promise that you will. May I just share, to respect your point about what are we going to do about this, how to minimize the damage that colorism will inflict on future generations, just to give you a couple ideas here. Interracial color discrimination must be brought out of the closet. We're going to go in a hurry here. More research is needed to document the effects of the problem on the African-American community. White personnel managers, therapists, teachers, doctors should be better informed about color prejudice. Black parents need to alert their children to color bias and teach them how to respond to it. Americans of all races must work together to overcome stereotypes about color, including the assumptions that dark-skinned black men are more criminally dangerous and that light-skinned black women are more feminine and beautiful. Hooray for that. It's a wonderful ideal. I'm not sure how we begin the process of doing it, especially since, as we've already established, it's so ingrained. I would ask you, Ms. Stewart.
Right. I think that when we concentrate on... Back up. First of all, there is no question that in the past, and probably currently right now, we are dealing with preferences for persons who are of lighter hue. That is established. But what happens from here on out is that we really need to look at not backlashing against persons of fair skin and just assuming that they can be the canvas on which we can paint the hostility that we have. We have to take that paint and put it somewhere and not put it in the black community.
I just wanted to say that I think we, as black people, are our worst enemies. And the perfect example is what the young lady on the right said, that she considers herself not black. We are all black people.
I'm not black. I don't consider that. How can you say I'm black?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We need to get away
I
from
just
color.
don't see how you can say...
He's a human being. I'm not saying I don't identify. Right.
But because of the society that we're in, she has been
you are not.
to that
I just don't feel that you are proud of your race as I am of my race. And if you were, you would say.